Dragnet was the most disciplined show on television. Every line was tight. Every scene was controlled. Jack Webb ran it like a machine, and nothing ever felt out of place. But there's one moment from 1953 that people are still talking about today. A comedian walked onto the set and said something completely unscripted. What happened next made Webb lose control for the first time in his career. The footage was never edited. It aired exactly as it happened. And when it resurfaced decades later, millions of people couldn't believe what they were seeing. Jack Webb's idea for Dragnet didn't come from a quiet office or a planned meeting. It started in 1948 when he played a forensic scientist in a film called He Walked by Night. That movie was based on the real manhunt for Irwin Walker, a troubled war veteran who shot a police officer and led Los Angeles authorities on a long, chaotic chase. During filming, Webb became close with LAPD Sergeant Marty Wynn, who worked as the technical advisor. Wynn shared real police files and real stories, and Webb found himself drawn to the gritty rhythm of actual police work. So he began visiting headquarters, sitting in patrol cars with Wynn and his partner, and even taking police academy courses just to understand every detail. Bit by bit, the idea grew into a radio show that would focus on daily police life without drama or exaggeration. When he pitched it to NBC, they weren't sure it would work, but once the limited run aired, the audience hooked onto it. Something about its honesty felt different, and slowly it began to change the way crime dramas were seen. When Dragnet finally premiered on NBC Radio on June 3, 1949, at 10 at night, Webb stepped into the role of Sergeant Joe Friday, with Barton Yarborough beside him as Sergeant Ben Romero. The early episodes were rough, almost shaky, but Webb kept refining his clipped, steady style until it became a signature. Yarborough, who had years of radio experience, balanced him with a warmer and more relaxed delivery. And together, they created a dynamic that listeners came back for every week. The radio show used titles like The Big Blank to focus on real case details, and it kept building momentum until it eventually reached television in 1951. It stayed on radio all the way to 1957. When Yarborough died in 1951, his death was written into the show, and the episode The Big Sorrow aired on December 27th that same year, allowing Friday to mourn Romero in a way that echoed real life. By August 1950, LAPD Chief William Parker had something bigger in mind for the show. He believed Dragnet could help shape how the public saw police work, so he approved every script personally through the Public Information Division. He wanted officers depicted as ethical and efficient, and insisted the word cop never be used. The LAPD supplied real vehicles, real equipment, and even real officers, and the accuracy became one of the show's strongest selling points. In October 1950, Parker awarded Dragnet a certificate praising its faithful portrayal of officers in action, something no other show had ever received from the department. When Dragnet moved from radio to television in 1951, Jack Webb already knew Joe Friday inside and out. He created the character, and he was the only one he trusted to play him. He rejected more than 200 actors while searching for a partner who matched his tight, factual style. He had spent months riding with detectives and sitting in academy classes, and he shaped every script with that experience. By the time the show hit television, Webb was rewriting lines and pushing for realism in every scene. Joe Friday eventually appeared in more than 270 radio and TV episodes, becoming one of the most recognizable detectives America had ever seen. Not long after the television launch, tragedy struck again. Barton Yarborough died suddenly from a heart attack on December 19, 1951, at age 51. The episode inspired by his loss was aired almost a year later. To fill the void, Webb chose Ben Alexander to play Officer Frank Smith. Alexander had been a child actor and brought a different kind of presence to the role. His face carried a soft, almost sad expression, and his humor flowed naturally. Webb tested their chemistry in multiple readings, making sure the partnership felt real. Alexander stayed on from 1952 to 1959, appearing in 73 episodes and becoming the partner most fans remembered even years later. When the 1966 revival came around, Webb invited him back, but Alexander was already tied to another series. Part of Dragnet's strength came from the people who appeared again and again. Olan Sol played the lab technician Ray Pinker and appeared in more than 270 scenes across radio and TV. His calm way of handling evidence added a sense of precision to the show. Vic Perrin showed up often as the deputy DA, guiding Friday through courtroom turns and legal twists. His authoritative voice grounded the courtroom moments and helped keep the tone steady. Their recurring roles helped build the sense that viewers were watching a real department carry out real work. Some well-known actors also came through Dragnet's world. Richard Boone played Captain James E. Hamilton in the 1954 film, bringing a more serious energy that matched Friday and Smith's intensity. Dennis Weaver appeared in several episodes before finding greater fame elsewhere. Webb chose him specifically because his acting style felt honest and natural, something Webb valued more than star power. Then came the moment television changed everything. On December 16, 1951, NBC greenlit Dragnet for TV. Webb hesitated at first because he feared the show wouldn't match the polished sound of the radio version, but NBC pushed forward anyway. The pilot was shot on 16mm film, a rare choice at the time, and it allowed sharp images and real location shooting. The series aired in tight 30-minute episodes filmed ahead of time, giving it a clearer, richer look compared to the live shows most networks still relied on. Dragnet's leap to TV helped define the future of crime stories and set a model for decades to come. That same night, the first TV episode aired. It was called The Human Bomb, and it pulled in an unbelievable 38 million viewers, almost 3/4 of all American households. The episode played out in real time as a man threatened to trigger a bomb at City Hall. Viewers sat in the tension as every minute passed. The response was instant. Dragnet became a sensation almost overnight. By the end of its first season, it was regularly in the top 5 shows nationwide. Webb pushed a documentary style for every episode, starting with the famous line saying the story was true. He filmed in real LAPD locations and hired police officers as extras. He used flat lighting, tight close-ups, and straightforward editing so nothing felt overly dramatic. Even the dialogue delivery was controlled. Actors sometimes read lines from a teleprompter to keep the tone clipped and factual. This simple style became Dragnet's heartbeat and shaped how future police shows were shot. Despite the documentary look, the show ran on a tight budget. Each episode cost about $25,000 to make. Webb used surplus Air Force Mitchell cameras because they were cheap and tough, and created a gritty texture that became part of the show's identity. Sets were reused, and scenes were filmed out of order to save time and money. Even with those limits, the production quality stayed high, and viewers never felt shortchanged. Dragnet grew into a force that almost pulled the whole country toward its screen. Week after week in the early 1950s, people sat in front of their televisions as if something important was about to be announced, and the numbers proved it. During the 1953 to 1954 season, the show reached a Nielsen rating of 53.2, holding the number 2 spot and sitting right behind I Love Lucy. At its height, about 40 million people tuned in every week, even though only around 26 million households even owned a television. That meant almost half of all TV homes were watching the same thing at the same time. The radio version stayed strong too, pulling an 8.7 in February 1954 and landing at number 14 overall. The show didn't feel like a trend that would come and go. It felt like it belonged to the era, like its style of plain storytelling and serious police work had locked into the mood of the country and refused to let go. That momentum reached theaters in 1954 when Dragnet became a feature film. The movie landed in September and felt bigger and bolder because it carried a real case that television censors found too violent for the small screen. The budget was only $500,000, but the film earned nearly $6 million and became Warner Brothers' second highest-grossing film of the year. Jack Webb and Ben Alexander carried their characters into color, which pulled fans in even more. Kids began wearing Joe Friday badges, and stores couldn't keep them stocked. The film's success opened the door for Jack Webb to create other crime stories like Pete Kelly's Blues and the D.I. And soon, Dragnet wasn't just a show or a movie. It was a piece of pop culture that people felt proud to follow. Awards followed quickly. Between 1952 and 1954, Dragnet won 4 Primetime Emmys, including Best Action or Adventure Series. It also took home a Peabody Award and a Golden Globe. And those honors mattered because they confirmed what fans already felt. Critics praised the show for the way it blended real police cases with television drama, creating a style people had never seen before. The Peabody Committee even pointed out how the show's documentary flavor lifted crime storytelling to a new level. With every award, the show's influence reached a little farther and shaped how future police procedurals would be made. It set a standard that other shows chased for decades. By the time the original run ended in 1959, Dragnet had crossed oceans and settled into homes around the world. It had been syndicated in 52 countries, making it one of the first American shows to spread so widely. Over the years, reruns brought in an estimated $20 million, and audiences in different countries connected with its honesty about justice and law enforcement. It even encouraged other nations to create their own police dramas using Dragnet's realistic approach as a guide. The show moved through borders the same way it moved through time, steady and familiar. Then the story circled back in 1967, when the revival arrived. On January 12th, Jack Webb stepped back into the role of Joe Friday, and Harry Morgan joined him as Officer Bill Gannon. The new version came in color and fit neatly into the late 1960s. Morgan's warm and calm presence softened Friday's sharp edges, and people liked that balance. The revival climbed into the top 30 in the Nielsen ratings and proved that the Dragnet formula still worked. Even in a changing world, the show kept its grip. But Dragnet had moments that broke its own rules too, and one of the most surprising came on May 21, 1953, during the filming of The Big Hands. Jack Webb was a man who never cracked on camera. Yet at the 14-minute and 32-second mark, comedian Cliff Arquette dropped a string of improvised lines about a killer with unusually large hands. His timing was so sharp and his delivery so odd that Webb lost control for 5 full seconds. His laugh burst out before he could stop it. It was raw, real, and completely out of character. Instead of cutting the moment, Webb left it untouched. He later said in a 1965 interview that the moment felt too real to remove. Years later, when the clip resurfaced on Reddit in 2021, it caught fire again and reminded viewers that even the most serious shows have their slips of humanity. Cliff Arquette was the reason that happened. He lived inside his Charlie Weaver character, and he brought that same folksy, unpredictable humor into the Dragnet set. None of his lines about the killer's hands were scripted. He simply followed his instincts, and his experience in radio and live comedy let him shape the moment as he spoke. Dragnet wasn't built for this kind of looseness. so the contrast made the scene unforgettable. His improvisation pushed past the show's strict tone and created a moment people still talk about. The decision to leave the blooper unedited built its own legacy. Fans saw it as a rare glimpse behind the curtain of a show that usually felt airtight. When the clip resurfaced in 2021, it gained more than 10,000 upvotes and drew new attention to vintage television bloopers. People loved that something so small could become so iconic. And while the moment was funny on its own, it also said something about authenticity. Sometimes the real, unplanned moment stays longer in memory than anything rehearsed. Dragnet had its serious side too, and sometimes it pushed so hard into heavy topics that viewers were stunned. One of the most intense examples came with The Big High, which aired on November 2, 1967. The episode followed a well-educated suburban couple who smoked marijuana and became so detached that they forgot their baby in a bathtub. The toddler drowned, and when Officer Gannon discovered the scene, he vomited on screen. The script went through 7 rounds of censorship by the LAPD, but even then, it shocked almost everyone who watched it. About 28 million viewers saw the episode, and it soon appeared in congressional hearings about youth drug culture. Parents in 52 cities protested, saying the episode went too far. The scene where Friday crushed a baggie of marijuana while calling it a gateway to hell aired during the Summer of Love, creating a clash between a growing counterculture and a show determined to warn the public. Critics later called the episode propaganda, but its impact spread far beyond television. Another episode that shook audiences was Blue Boy, which aired on January 12, 1967. It showed a teenager named Benji drifting into LSD use and eventually dying from an overdose. The timing made it even more powerful because LSD had just been banned in California on October 6, 1966, but was not yet federally regulated. Dragnet caught the substance in a strange moment between legality and fear. Nick at Night later promoted it as the most dangerous episode the show ever made. Critics said the risks were exaggerated, but the episode still shaped public perception and was mentioned in Senate hearings. Its dramatic portrayal of LSD's effects echoed across media and influenced how people talked about drugs for years. By 1969, the drug episodes reached Washington. Jack Webb testified before the U.S. Senate, defending his choices by saying the stories came from real police cases. Critics pushed back, comparing the episodes to the 1936 film Reefer Madness and accusing the show of stirring fear instead of presenting balanced information. The Big High drew the most heat because of its graphic portrayal of the child's death. Yet government committees continued to reference the episodes during discussions about drug policy. The debate that surrounded Dragnet showed how deeply television could affect public opinion. Webb believed he was warning the public. Critics believed he was pushing a narrative too extreme for the moment. That tension made Dragnet part of the national conversation, rather than just a show people watched in the evening. It started with an episode called The Big Smut in April 1954, a story that showed high school kids being used by an adult ringleader to sell obscene material. On screen, it looked shocking, but what made it worse was that it came straight from a real 1953 LAPD case, where a 16-year-old boy was caught running a ring that pushed out 500 copies of explicit magazines to local schools. When the episode aired, the country jolted. By June, 12 states banned it and called it obscene for letting teenagers get so close to adult crime. Parents complained, newspapers exploded with outrage, and NBC quietly pulled the episode from syndication for decades. The noise it created pushed networks into stricter rules about how minors could be shown in crime stories, and those rules shaped television standards for years. Then came The Big Gang in 1953. This time, the trouble came from inside wealthy homes. The episode showed white middle-class teenagers forming violent gangs and committing robberies, while their parents refused to believe they could be involved in anything wrong. Those parents shielded them and argued that their upbringing alone proved their innocence. The storyline felt bold because LAPD records from 1952 showed that juvenile gang arrests in Los Angeles had jumped by 300%, and many of those kids came from affluent families. The episode touched a nerve. By 1965, NBC removed it from reruns completely, and it stayed locked away for decades because it pushed class and race issues that networks were too afraid to revisit. In 1959, the show moved into political fire with the Big Beatnik. Joe Friday delivered harsh lines calling beatniks subversives and communist-influenced. The timing made it even heavier because Jack Webb had testified before HUAC just the year before in 1958, naming 15 suspected communist sympathizers. Those names led to blacklisting, broken careers, and bitter conversations throughout Hollywood. When the episode aired, civil liberties groups protested, and NBC received more than 2,000 complaints from viewers who felt the episode fed into the paranoia of the era. It became one of the most charged moments in Dragnet's history and revealed how deeply the Cold War shaped television. Behind the scenes, the show's vetting process added its own layer of tension. Over the years, 277 episodes reached the screen, but 19 were rejected before filming because LAPD reviewers called them indecent. Scripts about teen marijuana rings or controversial social issues were shut down immediately. In 1955, a story involving a high school drug ring was pulled after the LAPD warned it might encourage drug use. The review system was so strict that only about 68% of all submitted scripts were approved. Everything else disappeared into locked drawers, showing how much control the department had over what the public saw. That control extended far beyond script pages. Jack Webb, the creator and star, struggled with severe alcoholism throughout filming. Crew members later said that by lunchtime he would sometimes be too drunk to continue, which caused scenes to be rescheduled or rewritten. He smoked heavily and pushed himself through long days, and those habits dragged down his health. He died of a heart attack at only 62 in 1982. People close to him described years where his addictions shaped the daily mood of the set. Even though the public almost never heard about those moments, the LAPD's influence became even more visible in 1955 when a lawsuit revealed that the department had veto power over Dragnet's scripts. Anything they disliked could be rewritten or thrown out. Chief William Parker famously blocked an episode called The Big Bet because he felt its gambling scenes made the department look too friendly with mob figures. In return for this control, Webb gained access to real LAPD vehicles, equipment, and detailed case files. It was a deal that made the show incredibly realistic, but also raised questions about censorship and media manipulation, questions that only grew louder as the years passed. When the show returned in 1967, it faced new problems. The country had just gone through the Watts riots in 1965, and conversations about racial representation were everywhere. Yet Dragnet still did not feature a black officer until its third season. This delay angered viewers and pushed the NAACP to call for a boycott, arguing that the show ignored the realities of Los Angeles and helped reinforce outdated stereotypes. When the NAACP applied pressure, the producers cast Dave Evans as the first black officer. Even then, the issue lingered and reminded everyone how slow television could be to change. Tension behind the scenes didn't stop with bias accusations. Ben Alexander, who played Officer Frank Smith, sued Jack Webb in 1959 for $250,000 in unpaid residuals. The case settled quietly, but stories spread about fights, grudges, and disagreements over money and creative control. Although the exact settlement was never made public, it revealed the rough edges behind one of the most disciplined shows on television. The show's legacy was shaken again in 1987 when a parody film came out and poked fun at Dragnet's close ties to the LAPD. The film earned $57 million and openly mocked how much influence the department had over the original series. It brought all the hidden favoritism into the spotlight and pushed a new generation to question the relationship between police and media. Yet even with controversy swirling around it, Dragnet left a mark that never faded. It premiered on December 16, 1951, and changed television forever by inventing the police procedural format. It's ripped from the headlines approach, pulled from more than 1,200 real LAPD cases, and reached an audience of around 38 million at its peak. Webb pushed for accuracy so intensely that he often rewrote scenes minutes before filming, and many guest stars were actual officers. Its documentary-style camera work and clipped dialogue shaped shows that came after it, from Law and Order to CSI. The success even led Warner Brothers to release a theatrical version in 1954 and opened a new era of mixing film and television. Its cultural grip stretched beyond episodes, too. People started repeating a phrase that Joe Friday never actually said. "Just the facts, ma'am," became a national catchphrase, even though his real line was, "All we want are the facts, ma'am." Parodies repeated it so often that it became part of everyday language, a shorthand for direct communication. Webb's serious delivery helped the misquote grow into a symbol of American pop culture. The theme song became another legend, only 4 notes but instantly recognizable. Walter Schumann composed it, and the Ray Anthony version sold more than 500,000 copies and reached number 3 on the Billboard charts in 1953. Those 4 notes showed up in more than 500 movies, shows, and songs, including jokes on The Simpsons and hip-hop tracks like drag rap. People hummed it in daily life for fun, and it became one of the most famous TV themes ever created. The franchise kept expanding. Spin-offs like Adam 12 in 1968 and Emergency in 1972 came from Jack Webb's production company. Together with merchandise and reruns, the total value of the Dragnet universe passed $100 million. Adam 12 gained attention for using real LAPD badges, something only Dragnet had done before. Even after Webb's death, the franchise kept earning money through ongoing syndication. Dragnet even found a place in modern policing. The LAPD still uses clips from the show during training sessions. In the 2010s, the show returned to nightly reruns on MeTV and drew around 2 million viewers most nights. Then came 2025, when AI tools remastered the show in 4K and polished the audio. The new versions pulled millions of new views on YouTube, and Blooper compilations alone crossed 50 million views. Technology brought the old series back to life for a new generation, proving that its impact could stretch far beyond its original era.